The Te Deum Laudamus, the hymn of the church, dating from the 4th century, beautifully sung. And before that, the anthem by William Boyce from the 18th century. The King shall rejoice in thy strength, O Lord, the 21st Psalm. A moment of calm and peace in Westminster Abbey at the end of this coronation ceremony and service for King Charles III and Queen Camilla, who within moments will emerge from the St. Edmund Chapel, which is behind the great altar, and the procession will make its way back to the Great West Door, with that procession in the gold coach all the way back to Buckingham Palace. Prince of Wales, who took part in that ceremony, declaring homage to his father, the king. Majestic sound of Elgar's Pomp and Circumstance March number 4 to accompany the King's outward procession, as it's called, after this joyful celebration in words and music to mark a new reign. And behind the King, one of the 4 pages, his grandson, For Queen Camilla, 2 members of her family acting in the same capacity. Bishops chosen to assist the Queen during this ceremony, and her 2 companions, Queen's sister and close friend, Lady Lansdowne, flanking Annabel Elliot. The Abbey, an unprecedented gesture at a coronation. He prepares to meet the leaders and representatives of the faith communities whose presence here today is valued. And they all of them read a declaration to him of appreciation. And he thanks them. The other side of the nave, crossing the Winston Churchill Memorial, past the tomb of the unknown warrior, some members of his family, and just acknowledging there the Governors General of the Commonwealth Realms, whose presence here today, of course, is also greatly valued, and a reminder of the late Queen's untiring commitment to the Commonwealth ethos. Thanks to the bishops, and so King Charles III, the oldest person to be crowned monarch of the United Kingdom, emerges from Westminster Abbey to the sound of the bells and the crowds outside. His whole life has been spent in readiness for this day. And by his own insistence, despite his age, there is much that he still wants to achieve in this reign. So with the Abbey bells sounding the news of his coronation throughout the United Kingdom and beyond, Charles's journey as crowned sovereign is about to begin.
The bells ring out, and while Hugh was guiding us through that beautiful and very moving service in Westminster Abbey, this was happening outside. The rain was falling, but Within the rain, we saw the formation of the largest military procession in this country for 70 years. Over 4,000 personnel from 3 military services and the Commonwealth, as well as marching bands on foot and mounted, will make this a feast for the eyes and the ears. It is already in position. It stretches for a mile down the Mall, through Admiralty Arch, along Whitehall, all the way to Westminster. It is a magnificent sight. The Royal British Legion there on the inside around Parliament Square. And every regiment of the army represented. And at the head of this procession, leading the way, is the Brigade Major, Lieutenant Colonel James Shaw of the Grenadier Guards. His grandfather took part in Queen Elizabeth's coronation in 1953. And behind him we have the mounted band of the Household Cavalry. And behind them the King's Troop, commanded by Major Fran Sykes. And the band of the Royal Regiment of Scotland leads detachments from the Realm and Commonwealth forces and British Overseas Territories, and they will be flanked by 124 flag bearers. We have the RAF as well, commanded by Group Captain Stephen Harrison. We have the Army Royal Armoured Corps led by their colonels, the Army Corps, which includes the much-loved Gurkhas. We will show you all of this, but interestingly, they will all march off at the same time. And they are waiting for a command from Garrison Sergeant Major Andrew Stokes from the Coldstream Guards. We've mentioned Vern before. He's one of the leading architects of this procession, and indeed both processions. He will give a command. That will be passed down right to the front and to every single person marching, and they will move off at the same time, and they will march to the same beat, indeed the same tune. It's the first time that's been attempted. They've been rehearsing for 6 weeks to ensure that all of the bands are synchronised. And towards the back of the procession, you've caught a glimpse of it already, the Gold State Coach. And you may think this is the sort of thing you'd find in fairy tales. In fact, I rather suspect the fairy tales were inspired by this. It was first seen in public in 1762, when George III rode in it for the state opening of Parliament. It is 260 years old. And Brigadier Greville Bibby, CBE, is alongside me, waiting for the command here, and I know you're anticipating this hugely. Greville, it's a really exciting and I get impressive sight.
It is, and I was just thinking, there's the Garrison Sergeant Major, you just mentioned Vern Stokes. I was speaking to him yesterday, just confirming how on earth they get everybody to step off at the same time. And as you say, Claire, there's a pre-recorded message that is in the ear of every bass drummer of every band on parade.
There is the command. Now it will take a few seconds for that to filter down, and the procession will all move off together.
That is remarkable. The whole parade starts together, and you notice that he paused as it was being counted down in his ear. The same countdown for, as I say, all the bass drums. That's a remarkable feat.
And so begins the coronation procession, the route back from Westminster Abbey to Buckingham Palace. And this is where the fun begins, because the service, quite rightly, is solemn, it is serious. It was, I think, extremely emotional for those taking part and I think for most people watching, but this is almost a relief. Everything so far has gone absolutely like clockwork. And that golden coach, although it has poor suspension and may not be the most comfortable ride, it looks immaculate. It is glistening, it is gleaming, and it's made of gilt wood. That's a thin layer of gold leaf over wood. The interior is satin and velvet. And you see on the outside, the panels are painted with Roman gods and goddesses.
It also ensures that the King and Queen are the driest people on the parade.
That is true. Here we see the Commonwealth troops and the flags being carried on the outside as well. And there are 8 groups in total in this coronation procession.
The flags being carried by guardsmen across the household division.
And here we have the first of the carriages following the gold state coach, and you can see the Prince and Princess of Wales and their 3 children. Prince George, who played such a good role there as Page of Honour, and Princess Charlotte, who's just celebrated her 8th birthday, and Prince Louis as well, who was 5 last month. Very exciting for them. And the King and Queen, the King wearing his imperial state crown and carrying a sceptre with its cross and the orb, and wearing King George VI's robe of estates, and the Queen with her newly made robe of estates, and Queen Mary crown. The gold state coach is drawn by 8 Windsor Greys, and among those riding for the first time, Lucinda Perrott, first female rider in the team of riders. And there we can see Prince Louis. He's got a good view, he's got the outside seat, and Princess Charlotte waving enthusiastically. She's wearing a very beautiful Bruce Oldfield dress, and it's very similar in design, almost matching the one that her mother is wearing. And right at the front of the procession, you can see it's halfway down the Mall already. Apollo and Atlas. You see the drum horses at the front there, ridden by Apollo being ridden by Corporal of the Horse Richard Brown, and Atlas ridden by Lance Corporal of the Horse James Balaton.
As we saw Apollo, it was like misbehaving at the beginning, didn't he? They did so well to control him.
He was tricky, he was being tricky. Now, a very quick change and leg up for Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal, because you saw her leaving Westminster Abbey to a side door, and in a matter of minutes she is now mounted, and she is not far behind her brother the King, and she is gold stick in waiting and Colonel of the Blues and Royals, and I think fair to say the best rider on parade. She's a former Olympian, a European Open champion as well, so she knows what she's doing, and she is riding a horse called Falkland. There she is, and looking extremely comfortable en route. I think the rain has eased up, you know, just in time.
She's riding with the other colonels of the regiments of the Foot Guards. Next to her, Lieutenant General Sir James Bucknell, Coldstream Guards.
And we'll have a look further ahead in the parade, because the RAF make a particularly impressive sight because of their white gloves, and you can really see those arms marching in time. And now you can feel the energy coming back to the crowds. They've been watching the service on the big screen, but this is what they've been waiting for. This is why they slept overnight to get a position, so that as the procession came by, they would feel it as well as see it, and catch a sight maybe of those young princes waving at them. And just to correct myself, actually, Princess Charlotte and the Princess of Wales wearing outfits designed by Alexander McQueen. The Blues and Royals with red plumes and blue tunics, and behind the state coach, the lifeguards with their white plumes and red tunics. And that is their role, isn't it? The 2 regiments of the Household Cavalry, very much to protect the monarch.
They are the sovereign's escort, Claire, as it says, and whenever the monarch is on a ceremonial parade, you'll find the sovereign's escort protecting him.
And the Gold State coach also flanked by watermen, yeomen, palace footmen, grooms, all on foot, and 28 representatives from British overseas territories. And the Prince and Princess of Wales have recently enjoyed a visit to Wales. They stayed in a B&B and they went into the Brecon Beacons with the mountain rescue team to see the sort of work they do. The Royal Navy here making the turn in front of the statue of Charles I, in front of Trafalgar Square and through Admiralty Arch.
They're commanded by Captain Sophie Shaughnessy there. She's a marine engineer who served with great distinction in the Royal Navy, Bosnia and the Gulf. This is her last duty in uniform, commanding the Royal Navy at the coronation.
And they're the band of the Royal Marines with their white pith helmets. And I think that royal blue on the decorative, the mains obviously of the Windsor Greys, it looks so striking, and there have been various colours used of silver for the Silver Jubilee, gold for the Golden Jubilee, and the King picking royal blue. Passing the cenotaph, coming up towards the memorial for the women of World War II. On the Mall, we can see the full glory of this enormous procession. As we've said, the largest for 70 years, probably.
It is, and as you said earlier, it's divided into eight distinct groups. Brigade Major leading from the front, and then we've got the Royal Air Force, closely followed by all the regiments from the Royal Army. And then the senior army corps, the infantry following them. Behind them are the junior army corps, and hopefully we'll see all these different regiments and units more closely in a minute. And then, as we've seen, the Royal Navy and the Royal Marines bringing up the rear. Of course, that's a great honour for them. It's the senior service. They are closest to the monarch. Behind them, the footguards and household cavalry dismounted.
The Gold State coach making good progress down Whitehall. We'll pause for the national anthem. Regiments of the Foot Guards now making that turn, and they will have to funnel themselves through those three arches, so quite a feat level of organisation.
It certainly is, and it's going to get even more challenging when they come to the gates of the forecourt of Buckingham Palace. And we see there behind the Foot Guards, we have a number of different organisations, the Yeoman Warders, the Royal Watermen, as you mentioned before, the King's Bodyguard, the Yeomen of the Guard, the Royal Company of Archers, and the Honourable Company of Gentlemen at Arms. All 5 regiments regiments of foot guards with their King's colour ahead of them, and their regimental lieutenant colonels and commanding officers on parade. And there you see the dismounted regiments of the Household Cavalry, the Blues and Royals, and the Life Guards.
Commonwealth troops in the overseas territories. And it's wonderful to know the reach that today is having around the world.
447 representatives of the Commonwealth Armed Forces on parade. And of course the King is head of the Commonwealth. And very interested to learn that he has managed to visit 45 of the 56 Commonwealth countries, which is quite a feat.
I think his first visit was at the age of 5. I think he went to Malta, first of all. It's only a year after he attended the Queen's coronation. He was on his first official trip to a Commonwealth country. You see that grandstand behind. They've got a lovely view now. We're back with the Prince and Princess of Wales. And the children all at the same school now, at Lambert School in Windsor. And Princess Charlotte, I know, is massively into her gymnastics. The princes enjoy their sport as well, and I think their parents are very keen to ensure they have an outdoor lifestyle as much as possible, a normal childhood as much as is possible. And there we find their Royal Highnesses, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, with their children, Lady Louise Mountbatten Windsor and James Earl of Wessex. Louise is 19 now, she's studying English at St Andrews University. And she'll be particularly appreciative of the driving of the carriages. Carriage driving, a great love of hers. And in the final carriage, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester and Vice Admiral Sir Timothy Lawrence. And the King and Queen Camilla have a chance now to really enjoy the crowds who have gathered and acknowledge them as much as possible. And having got through... the Canadian Mounted Police. Now the Mounties have a wonderful relationship with the Crown. They have over the years gifted many horses to the late Queen, and indeed are giving a horse to the King that he will ride for the King's birthday parade, as it will be, Trooping the Colour, in future years. So the Mounties have a very prime position.
They have, I mean...
And actually, I think all of those horses here have been gifted to the royal family. So they are being ridden here, but they actually now belong to the royal family.
No, I was going to say, what an extraordinary thing for them to be able to do, to come over from Canada and ride at the head of the royal procession.
The Royal Air Force have reached the Queen Victoria Memorial, and I mentioned this earlier, all of the marching elements to this will make their way into the gardens of Buckingham Palace, and they will form up there to salute the King. Because they're ahead of the Gold State Coach, they haven't had the chance to see him since he's been crowned, but they will in the gardens.
Bands of the Household Division.
You were making a point earlier, Greville, about the importance of music to both the infantry and indeed cavalry, but that beat, the importance of keeping everybody on a beat.
It is, but also the idea that the music is a morale booster. It makes everyone, lifts everybody. So if you're going into battle, to have music in front of you is reassuring, and of course when the enemy hear that loud beat coming towards them, it also sphere into them. So it plays many different parts, quite the ceremonial side.
Prince and Princess of Wales and Princess Charlotte and Prince George and Prince Louis, I think, still enjoying their ride.
I was going to say earlier, I was trying to interrupt you. I think they might compete for best show and tell at school, don't you?
Oh, I think they will. I have to say that we were awarding, medals, obviously medals to all the pages in the service, but also I think a medal to Penny Mordaunt, Lord President of the Privy Council. It's a heroic effort.
Heroic is the word. I was talking about the ensigns who carry all the colours, the flags out on parade, and they'll be extremely heavy with the rain, but she was holding that ceremonial sword.
Talking about the importance of the Queen's coronation 70 years ago in terms of the history of television. And you look at all of the personal filming that's going on and think what this represents in terms of footage taken, individual footage taken. It must be covered by more cameras, if you see what I mean, official cameras and personal cameras, than any event ever. So that grandstand on the left is where we have members of the NHS, care workers as well, veterans, and those representing various charities. Oh, good move there from the Royal Navy.
Wow, this is the manoeuvre I was talking about earlier. You can see the gate top right where they're all going through. And this is a new military manoeuvre which has been designed specifically for this parade to reduce the frontage of 12 into a frontage of 6.
So it's sort of halving itself in
yes. And I have to say, the Navy just executed that absolutely superbly. See the streetliners there, still standing there. They've been there since 9 o'clock this morning as the Coldstream Guardsmen saluting the royal family.
And I wanted to ask you about the 5-pace gap of the streetliners. How is that measured?
Well, you might be familiar with some senior non-commissioned officers. In fact, you see the Garrison Sergeant Major in the background there, right in the to the left middle of the screen, carrying a stick, and that is called a pace stick. And it is, when it's opened, it replicates a 30-inch pace, and they use the pace stick to get the 5 paces that they need between each streetliner. There is a pace-sticking World Championships, Claire. Did you know that?
I did not.
No? Held at Sandhurst every year.
He's enjoying this, I think. He's only a year older than the king was when he attended the Queen's coronation. But all of them will remember this. They're old enough to remember it, and everybody here today. It's a day they will never forget. So the lifeguards are imposing royals either side of the Gold State coach. And the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, the Duke and patron of many charities, including the National Youth Theatre, the British Paralympic Association, the Sport and Recreation Alliance as well. You can see the movement of the Gold State coach, and the reason why they didn't want to have it on the way to Westminster Abbey, I think it made me feel quite seasick. It has been, compared to those who have, compared by those who have ridden in it. It's like riding on rough seas. Just to say on iPlayer, you can, if you wish, select uninterrupted commentary free coverage, or if you require more detail on Red Button, we have accessible commentary, also a signed version on BBC Two, and of course highlights on the full coverage on iPlayer available immediately, and highlights tonight. See there the very back of the procession. The front of it already has reached the gardens of Buckingham Palace, and the back of it now into its last section down the Mall. And colours being lowered as the
stagecoach goes by. Yes, the soldiers will use their rifles to salute, and the young officers carrying the colours will lower the colours. I was talking about how tricky that becomes when they are wet. It's difficult enough normally, but when they're wet, they'll be 3 times the weight.
King Charles III is the Commander-in-Chief of the UK Armed Forces, and that's a role he inherited on the death of Queen Elizabeth in September last year. And he holds the highest rank in all 3 services, so Field Marshal, Admiral of the Fleet, and Marshal of the Royal Air Force.
Yes, and of course, Captain General of the Royal Marines. You can see bottom left there is colour down, saluting as the King goes by. Talking of colours and flags, some of the horsemen have been heroic today. I'm sure the viewers have spotted a number of horses who've clearly been spooked by waving flags and cheering crowds. Which obviously is a hazard of so many on duty, but it's amazing the way they manage to control their horses in such circumstances. Particularly the musicians, as you said earlier, who don't necessarily have hands on the reins.
Talking of horsemanship, you see that Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal there, back right of the Gold State coach, so relaxed in the saddle. And it's not easy riding. The point is, A, it's not easy riding, but B, riding in uniform, riding in boots that have no give, that are stiff, that makes it a little bit harder.
Well, they've also got spurs on as well, Claire, which are really quite sharp, and should they inadvertently allow a spur to wander into the side of a horse, it will take off. Not ideal.
Princess of Wales have been on a trip to Wales. They very much want to reinforce that link with Wales as a country, with Welsh-produced goods. I think form an even deeper bond.
There's the Guard of Honour again, Claire. See the standard of the Coldstream Guards. Only ever carried in the presence of the monarch. Two colours.
Absolutely. He's done so well.
See the Sovereign's escort pulled off to the left. I don't think they'll be going into the gardens, Claire. I'm sure that the gardeners
The gardeners would like it.
very happy if those horses appeared on their lawn.
No, they will be taken back to the mews. And as the gold state coach disappears, we have one last look at Prince Louis there, and the Prince and Princess of Wales, and Prince George and Princess Charlotte. We will next see all of those who were involved marching on procession. We'll see them formed up in the gardens behind the palace, and a chance to personally salute the King and Queen. And that was impressive in scale and execution and accuracy and uplifting.
So uplifting and so unique to get representatives from across all the armed forces on parade at the same time together to celebrate the new monarch.
Really credit to those who have planned it and to the work that's gone in rehearsing some of those rehearsals through the middle of the night.
But indeed, and you know, we expect our ceremonial troops and others to do a good job. That's what we've come to expect, but actually so many of the personnel on parade today it's not what they do every day. They come off their ships, they come from their air bases and their regimental barracks all over the country and indeed the world to perform today. And we can see the colours of all those regiments represented, colours and standards there around the Queen Victoria Memorial.
A wonderful, glorious sight. Hugely enjoyed, I think, by those present here, but also by those watching. And one last duty for those military personnel to perform.
Now, Claire, thank you. Well, to share their thoughts on this extraordinary day, our historian and broadcaster, Abdullah Shoga, and Daily Mail writer Robert Hartman. I think little Prince Louis is the only one who needs a little bit of CBeebies. The rest of us couldn't get enough of that. What a spectacle! Robert Hartman, what's your initial reaction to everything we've seen?
Well, I mean, to have seen that sort of medieval sight of a sort of a king in his shirt kneeling before the altar.
Yes.
Zadok sort of builds to its crescendo, and then the crowning moment. You know, I mean, just sort of timeless. I mean, properly timeless. And yet the sort of fabulous parade that's come through the streets, the biggest parade since 1953. So we've got a lot, so much tradition there, but at the same time, so many modernising touches. I mean, there were so many elements of that coronation. And seeing that the number of women possessing key roles, Penny Morgan, one of the great officers of state, there right at the front, female bishops. It's a very 21st century coronation that hasn't really changed much since the Old Testament. Can I put it like that?
You can, and that's put very well. David, let's go then to inside the Abbey. As you were watching that, what thoughts were going through your head?
Well, as Robert said, I mean, this is an ancient and medieval tradition to see things that almost nobody has seen. I mean, to have adult memories of the last coronation, you have to be in your 90s. There's around 600,000 people in their 90s in the UK at the moment. That's less than 1% of us. Most of us, more than 99%, have never witnessed that. So a tradition that has lain dormant, as it were, for 70 years can suddenly be revived and can be seen in all of its complexity, all of those layers of history interacting. It's quite remarkable.
Robert Hartman, looking at the face of the King, there was a moment when both you and I sort of looked at each other, and it was the moment when the Prince of Wales pledged his allegiance and his oath to his father and kissed him on the cheek, and that was the moment that I felt that our king looked most pregnant with emotion.
I think it was incredibly touching for him, and it was a reminder of that moment in the Queen's coronation in 1953. All the solemnity, suddenly the sort of the serenity just sort of cracked momentarily when Prince Philip gave her a kiss on the cheek, and it's a moment where the sort of family breaks through all this tradition. I think it was a very sort of reassuring moment, and he was clearly, I think, that to him it was a very poignant scene.
And Queen Camilla. I didn't quite have time to ask you before the start of us about Queen Consort versus Queen Camilla. And of course it's correct, I understand, to use either and both. But now seems the time when both the palace and maybe the nation feels comfortable with the words Queen Camilla.
I think that's one of the changes we will see as from today. I mean, up until now, Queen Consort was the official term everybody used for very understandable reasons, because in those early days people didn't want to confuse the Queen, Queen Camilla, with the late Queen, in the same way that in 1952 the Queen Elizabeth became the Queen Mother to distinguish her from Queen Elizabeth II. But when we saw today, it's fascinating. Go through that order of service, you won't find the word consort in there at all. It's Queen Camilla from beginning to end, and I think that's probably what we're going to see from now on. Inside the palace there, they sometimes refer to TQC, the Queen Consort. They can just do TQC, the Queen Camilla. They don't need to change it, but I don't think we'll hear consort so much anymore.
Yes, the Vivat Camilla bit was interesting. That was the moment, really, that it seemed...
She's in Latin. It's there. It's in the order of service.
Daniel Lashoga, the parade itself, I mean, that contrast, as Robert Hardman was saying, there was a solemnity, understandably, entirely appropriately, within the Abbey, and then the drums, they beat, and we suddenly all sort of raised ourselves up for that, even through the raindrops. Very, very colourful and vibrant, and it continues, this wonderful parade.
Well, the ceremony took us back to the 11th century, Westminster Abbey becoming the site of coronations. This is the 18th, 19th century. It's very different to 1953. The scale of the military power is much, much reduced. In some ways, that's a very good thing. But I think the fact that all of this colour, all of this other set of traditions can be marshalled so quickly, so effectively, I think it remains fascinating.
And what about then this royal salute, Robert Hardman? We're about to see, there's something, I mean, again, that none of us have seen. It's one of those days in the back garden of Buckingham Palace. What is it about, and what should we look out for?
Well, it's in a way, it's recognising the effort that all the armed forces have put in. I mean, they've been rehearsing this sometimes through the middle of the night. They've obviously been standing in the pouring rain. They're incredibly proud to come here and salute their Commander-in-Chief. But if you're on parade, the one thing you almost never see is the Commander-in-Chief, because you have to march in front of him, except for the streetliners. Most people can't see him. So it was an idea of the Earl Marshal, the Duke of Norfolk, who put all this together, and the King, that everyone who takes part in this procession should be given the opportunity to actually salute their Commander-in-Chief at the end. So the idea is march them all through to the garden. Sorry for the gardener, I have to say.
Yes, it's a bad day for the gardeners.
But he's got a garden party next Tuesday as well, so
it only gets worse. Yes.
He's got a lot of feet on his lawn. But they're going to march through, or most of them are. Clearly, I think, as Claire mentioned, the horses are staying. They've got a different route. I think that would have been too much for the gardener. And they will line up. They will form up on the palace lawn, very large lawn, largest lawn in London. And they will face their king. And when he is processed through the palace now, he's obviously now, as we speak, getting out of the Gold State coach and heaving mostly a sigh of relief. Well, there are a few bits to come, and he's walking through from the east side, which we're here on the east front. He's going through to the west front, out onto the terrace there, and there he will take the salute of his troops. And I think he'll be very grateful to them, and they'll be very pleased to see him.
And that's join Claire again. I think she's ready to tell us the scene that is being set in the garden of Buckingham Palace. Claire.
Thank you, Kirsty. The King's Troop going through your shot there, and they play such an important role. And we mentioned earlier, we don't think that the horses will be making their way onto the lawns, but a rare opportunity to see the gardens of Buckingham Palace. And all those who are on foot for the coronation procession have formed up. They will be shortly saluting the King. 39 acres in total, and these are the largest private gardens in London. They have over 1,000 trees, 325 wild plant species. And actually it's here that the King's renowned love of gardening began. Then the Queen gave him and his sister, Princess Anne, a small vegetable plot in the gardens. And the central feature is the lake behind there. Created in the 19th century, originally fed from the overflow from the Serpentine in Hyde Park, and today a self-regulating ecosystem fed from the Buckingham Palace borehole. But this, Greville, a wonderful sight.
It really is, Claire. It's really quite emotional, this, and this is the pipes and drums of all the regiments that have pipes and drums in the Royal Air Force. 18 different sets of pipes and drums all playing together.
Well, what an astonishing and special sight that is. The military on display, all of the armed forces there, putting on quite a remarkable show for the King, the Queen, and the rest of us. Hopefully it's not over though. We should have a flypast still to come as well. Whilst that wonderful military procession was in full flow, Sophie Rayworth caught Bishop Gooley and Bishop Rose Hudson Wilkin as they left the Abbey after the coronation service.
So much history in that abbey today, but I'm here with two women who were not only very much at the heart of the history, but were making it themselves. Bishop Rose and Bishop Gooley, you both were the first 2 of 3 female bishops who've ever taken part in a coronation. What was that moment like for you? Well, inevitably a huge honour and a privilege. There was so much innovation in that service, as well as, of course, all the historic elements. But for us, very, very special to be amongst the first 3 female bishops. There have only been women bishops since 2016, so it's the first time it's been possible, and obviously a real joy for us.
And what about you?
Excited, surprised, and honoured, deeply honoured to have been part of this historic moment, once in a lifetime moment.
And the moment when the screens went around the King and you were so close to it all, what was that like?
It felt to me like the most intimate part of the service. It becomes very, very private between the King and between God. And then, of course, the beautiful screens and that spine-chilling moment when Zadok the priest begins, and you kind of have a sense that something is happening, even though it's the least visible part of the service. So yeah, really, really special.
Yes, he emerges from the screen, just, undressed almost, and you think, wow, something is happening here, or something has happened. And of course, Zadok for me too I felt transported. It was amazing.
Bishop Rose, you also gave Queen Camilla, the Queen Consort's rod to touch. Describe that for you.
Well, again, it's, how does one, coming from Montego Bay, Jamaica, get to be right at the heart of it? But it was just such an honor and a privilege to be part of that, and it's going to stay with me forever.
Yeah, and you were both right there, very much at the heart of it, making history yourselves, as I said. The atmosphere, though, inside the Abbey, what was it like?
It was joyful, I think, really joyful, but also the profound and intimate moments, the deeply sacred moments, the giving of Holy Communion is at the heart of every Christian service. So in a sense, it's what we do all of the time, but something particularly
the
special.
ceremony, but it is in a religious context.
Bishop Rose, Bishop Gooley, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your role today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with perfect timing, back in the gardens at Buckingham Palace, Lieutenant Colonel James Colby will give the command for the Royal Salute, and then the national anthem will be played by the massed bands of the Household Division, led by Lieutenant Colonel David Barringer.
All right! Oh! Ah!
Just saw there Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bonus at the top of the steps, Claire, who is the retiring regimental adjutant of the Welsh Guards, been in the service, continuous service for 54 years, and he's giving the signal to their Royal Highnesses that the parade are ready to receive them. It's his last act in uniform.
And we looked there at the shot of those who were on parade, 4,000 of them who played a key role today, right at the back of the pipes and drums. Then the Commonwealth countries, 33 of them here, representing the 56 nations and realms. The RAF, we saw 520 of them on parade today, and every regiment of the army represented, the regular and reserves. The Royal Navy and the Royal Marines, who are easily spotted with their white pith helmets, and the 5 regiments that are the troops of the royal household in the front there. And ahead of them, that whole row, is the colours, all the colours and the standards of those on parade.
Just on the left there, at the bottom of our screen, the service chiefs, Claire. So the heads of all the services.
And right towards the back, and we might catch a sight of him later, is the mascot of the Irish Guards, who is Seamus, the Irish wolfhound. He's the one dog there on parade.
The service chiefs. James Colby waiting for their Royal Highnesses to come to the top of the steps. The Garrison Sergeant Major keeping a careful eye on him. You see he's put his pace stick down. It's the pace stick I was talking about.
And His Majesty King Charles III stepping out now onto the West Terrace of Buckingham Palace. Queen Camilla following him. And you see Prince George there at the back of the train, still playing a role as Page of Honour.
His Majesty Armed Forces! Royal Salute! Return! Arms!
Garrison Sergeant Major Andrew Stokes giving the order now for them to remove headdress and call out for 3 cheers.
Move! Headdress! Turn! 3 cheers for His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Queen! Hep hep! Hep hep! Hep hep! The parade will replace headdress! Replace! Headdress! Turn it! Rose! Quick! March!
And the mass pipes and drums are now playing a tune called King Charles III. I think Andrew Stokes, known as Vern, can reflect on a job really well executed there. I've never heard 3 cheers resound so loudly in an open space.
I was the wrong person to ask the commentator on this. I'm actually in tears. I mean, that was really amazing.
And you saw the Yeoman of the Guard saluting the King as he went back into Buckingham Palace, and we will see the King and Queen shortly alongside working members of the royal family on the balcony, and we still have a tri-service military fly past with 68 aircraft filling the skies above. But as far as the ground is concerned, the job that these 4,000 have done and the role they have played is almost complete.
They've now got to pick up their weapons. There you go. And not let their bearskins fall off. They can't look down. Well done.
So Greville, overall, what would your reflections be on what you've seen of the coronation procession?
Well, we've talked about the scale of the parade, because it is big. It's the biggest thing I've seen in my time when I was serving, as you said earlier, for 34 years. But I think it's the delivery of the most extremely complex military operation, because that's what it was. It was a military operation delivered to perfection. And a wonderful, wonderful tribute to our King. And finally, Claire, it just makes you proud to be British.
Well, most of these servicemen and women have been on the go since 3:30 this morning, when they left their bases to take the train to London, and nearly 11 hours later, they will now disperse. They will head back by train to those bases, and they can be very proud of the part they have played in a procession that truly was fit for a king and a queen.
And David are still with me. We could hear those 3 cheers from inside our studio, which is on the other side of the palace wall. It was quite a roar. And I noticed, Robert Hartman, that there was a sigh from the King, a sigh of pleasure, a sigh of admiration, maybe a mixture of both.
I think you're absolutely right, Kirsty. I saw it was a very fond reflection. I think, a very proud Commander-in-Chief, just thinking, we've got here. This is he's been following all these rehearsals for weeks now, and all the preparations for what is a first. I mean, this has not happened at a coronation before. The garden hasn't been used as a parade ground like that before. Maybe this is the shape of things to come. Who knows? It's a new reign, but he loved it. I mean, he absolutely loved that.
Important to remember too that King Charles trained as a military jet pilot. He studied at the Royal Naval College at Dartmouth. He's trained to fly military helicopters. David Olusoga. So this is, for him it is not just a ceremonial role. He has worked with these people, he respects these people, he understands these people.
I think it shows the deep connections between the monarchy and the armed forces. Just at the ceremony, I think reminded us of the deep historic connections between the royal family and the church. Now, I'm sure there is relief. Now the ceremony is over, now that the day has been done, there's lots of questions and lots of analysis about what does this tell us about Britain, what does it tell us about the place of the monarchy in Britain, about the differences between modern Britain and many of these institutions, religious and military.
And also he had all his regiments of the army were there. Every part of the armed forces was there in front of him. He probably won't see anything quite like that for many years, if indeed again. I think as a monarch, as a commander-in-chief, that's such a strong thing. And he has, as we were hearing earlier, I mean, he's played such a part of it. He was at university, he first learned to fly in a chipmunk, he wanted to have a Welsh instructor, as was about to be Prince of Wales. They couldn't find one that was available. They got a Kiwi in called Philip Pinney, taught him to fly in a chipmunk. He got his wings, then he went into the Navy. As we heard earlier, he's done his parachute jump with the Paras. And he's, when you've grown up, and there's always really been someone in uniform around you every day of your life.
Yes.
Even at the lunch table, there's normally a query or somebody hanging around. They are a Forces family. The Windsors are the ultimate Forces family. So that is a very big deal.
So, David, you were talking there about a bit of analysis, and this is probably the moment for it. Let's do a little bit of instant analysis then. What you've seen today, what we've learned, and we've all been reading up about it, and we kind of thought we knew what we were going to see, but actually, given what you've seen today, firsthand, out in front of us, we've had the most spectacular view. Does it feel like the page has been turned? Does it feel fresh to you? Does it feel like a different moment?
I think there's an argument that it almost accentuates and makes us more aware of how ancient, how in some ways unlike the country these traditions are. We are a very unceremonious people. I think if you compare us to countries like Spain with a calendar of Catholic events during the year, or somewhere like Japan, we have very few ceremonies, and yet we have this ancient ceremony gone on for at least 1,000 years in the same building. That gulf between us as a rather unceremonious and rather unreligious people and this highly religious ancient ceremony, I think that does show this, if not a tension, a contradiction there.
That's a really interesting point. And Robert Hardman, we can hear. I'm not sure where the cheers are coming from. I don't know if they're coming from the military in the back garden. I don't know if they're coming from the crowds on the Mall, because we understand this is I think it's the crowds on the Mall. Let's take a look. There we are. They're coming from behind the barriers where they have been watching the incredible display before them. Their patience has been rewarded with that spectacle. And there we are. It was, of course, last June at the Platinum Jubilee that we saw scenes similar to this. We watched, I think it was 22,000 or so people stream down the Mall to pay their respects, to pay their tribute to Queen Elizabeth, who had been on the throne for 70 years, and today, a different moment. They come to pay their respects to King Charles III. As you look at these scenes, both of you, let me go to you first of all, Robert Hardman. I mean, that's quite something, isn't it?
It's wonderful, as you say, Kirsty. I mean, the last time we saw this when you and I were here last summer for the Great Platinum Jubilee. But I think what this underlines, and the flags there underline as well, we do live in an era of soft power, of influence and persuasion and charm rather than coercion. I think what today we've seen is a lot of this is soft power. You look at that crowd there. I was out among them yesterday. They're from all over the world. I mean, these are not by any means, just Brits or even just loyal subjects. People have flown in from all over. This has been watched all over the world, and the fact you can get a crowd like this with just a handful of policemen in ordinary helmets marshalling this crowd. I mean, there's not a lot of high vis in there. It's all very good-natured, and it goes, I think, to the fact that it reminds me actually of the Golden Jubilee, which was produced amazing scenes just like this actually, which were used by the British Olympic bid to show the world when we were trying to persuade the world to give us the London Olympics. Look at the sort of party we put on here, and it was scenes just like this. And these are, they come around every now and then, and out of nowhere come these fabulous crowds. And any minute now we'll see what it means to both parties.
Yes, David. There is, I think, 6,000. Media people here representing broadcasters from 22 countries on 6 different continents. This is a version of Britain, and I appreciate entirely what you're saying. This is not something we do often, but it is something that is watched by people around the world, and people appear still to be pretty interested in it. Is that fair?
I think a spectacle like this, I think a ceremony of this lineage is absolutely fascinating to people all around the world. You can see that by the scale of media interest. I think I get worried when people say that this is somehow enhances Britain's position in the world. I think people are interested. I'm not quite sure it does perform the soft power purpose that many people suggest. But it's certainly something which people are fascinated about and associate with Britain.
Okay. For now, both of you, thank you so much. It's been so interesting to talk to you. And I think Anita Rani is still on the Mall. She is amongst those crowds. Anita.
Thanks, Kirsty. I am still on the Mall, and I'm with Emma May Miller, who is a young ambassador for the Prince's Trust. Emma May first met the King when he presented you with the Young Changemaker Award.
Yeah.
High five on that. How was that experience?
I guess life-changing. Being presented with such a big award, with the King giving it to me, it was completely surreal, and all I did was cry the entire time because it was just like shock that how did I manage to get this? Why am I being recognised? Yeah, it was just I have no words for it. It's just completely crazy.
And then you met him again.
And I met him again.
And he remembered you.
And he remembered me.
I'm not surprised. But your involvement with the Prince's Trust started because you were supported by it.
Yeah.
Tell me about that experience.
So in January of 2020, I started receiving support from my Youth Development Link UN. It was identified that I was in a really bad place, so I did one of the programs called Explore, which is all about finding confidence, learning to be yourself, building self-resilience. So I
Because
really
you were a young carer, weren't you?
Yeah,
And
so,
you suffered with quite severe anxiety.
yeah. So growing up being a young carer and also struggling with social anxiety disorder, I was at a point where I wasn't leaving my room. I wasn't able to have friends, I didn't have any hobbies, I had no life, and I was stuck in my room 24/7.
And how did being supported by Prince's Trust change that for you?
It gave me the realisation that I can do anything. I just need to push myself out of my comfort zone a little, and push myself to just be me, really. Just let my personality show.
And how are you now?
I do lots of different events. I'm a young ambassador for Prince's Trust, so I get to attend so many events and meet lots of different people, and yeah, getting to enjoy my life.
And from someone who couldn't leave their room to now being on national telly.
On national
Being
telly.
so confident and so brilliant. Emma May, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by Anton de Berg, and a very well-known face from Dragon's Den, Deborah Meaden, is also here. So nice of you to take the time to join us. What do you make of all that? Deborah, what a spectacle.
What a spectacle. And you know what, I was a bit worried this morning because it was raining, you know, but it hasn't made any difference. It's kind of made it even more British. We're very good at weather, aren't we?
I think that's true. And of course, the last coronation, I'm choosing to look upon this positively, because the last coronation 70 years ago, it was unseasonably cold and wet. And we had this very historic and wonderful rain. So Anton, I'm taking this as a good omen.
I think you're right to do so. It turned out rather well in 1953, and I think it's been a wonderful spectacle, a wonderful day. The moment I was watching on in the car on the way up, and I was watching on the phone, and the moment where he said, "God save the King," out loud, I had a moment.
Did you?
I was just on my, and I literally welled up. It was a bit out of the blue like this. Wow, and it's incredible, and it's interesting to still feel this way about it. I find that sort of fascinating, that we were talking about it being an ancient tradition,
Yes,
etc.,
yeah.
and all this, but still it resonates so strongly, certainly with me, and the pomp and the ceremony and all the armed forces are out and everybody there, and everybody, the three cheers you spoke about earlier, but I find it just really, really emotional, and I love it.
Deborah, it's a really interesting thing, because of course, quite legitimately, it won't resonate with everybody, but there's some people for whom it's a complete turn-off. But the people that it does mean something to, it does get you right there.
It does, but I think even if you're not particularly strongly royalist, the community, the coming together of all these people in the pouring rain, you know, the camping out the 2 nights before, there's something lovely about a nation coming together. And, you know, what a joyous moment to celebrate, as I say, whether you're a strong royalist or you're not a strong royalist.
And also maybe at a time when we have less and less community, because people are in their silos, they're listening to their music, they're watching their television programs, everything is sort of fed to us. In a sense, the community where we can all come together and agree on something
It's
feels
rare,
pretty good.
yeah.
on Monday, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was the big help out, because this is part of the push of this coronation weekend. We've got a bank holiday on Monday. The King is interested in people not just sitting on their backsides and eating coronation chicken and coronation quiche. He wants them to go out and volunteer.
And as a legacy piece, not just on Monday, you know, sort of forever. So
this is a Kickstarter for it.
Absolutely, it's called the Big Help Out, and we have so far about 1,200 businesses already signed up. Huge organisations through to tiny organisations. We're expecting 6 million people to volunteer in something. And there's a platform that you can go onto and say, that's what I really want to do in my local area. And you've got charities on the platform. They can say these are the type of projects that you can support. So it's really about getting people involved, because volunteering is very good. It doesn't just do fantastic good. It's good for the soul. It's good for the mental health. It kind of gets you involved in things.
Do you think there are a proportion of people who might want to help, but they don't know where to begin? Because they don't know if they get it right. They don't know how many hours they'd have to give up. They don't know if they'd really enjoy it. And then if they gave up, would they feel terrible because then it's a failure? You know, there are little bits of resistance in all of us.
I think you're absolutely right, but also I think that's why business has had to get involved, because businesses need to be able to say, yes, you can take time off.
Okay.
You know, and not only that.
Will businesses say that?
Well, my businesses are, yes.
Okay.
So, and they are, clearly, because there's 1,200 businesses that signed up to do it. And also showing people, you know, go onto this platform and you can choose what you want to get involved in, because the things that you love might not be the things that I love, that, you know, get me fired up. So I think it's a wonderful way of saying, on this platform, you're going to find something you really care about, you know. And once I think you start volunteering and getting involved, and you feel that difference that you're making, you know, I think that's really important to all of us, isn't it?
Well, a little bit means so much, that's the thing. You don't have to feel that you don't have to commit swathes of time to this. You can just do a bit, but it means so much. You give, by doing a bit, you give so much, and I think that's the most important thing. And often with these things, just getting started, and then you'll end up building on it yourself anyway.
Anton, when you are, as my granny would have said, such a well-kent face, when you are on such a big show, you will get asked very, very often to help out with, she was a lovely granny, to help out with this and that, and can you lend your time? You know, well, to both of you, of course, the requests must come in all the time. How do you choose what to get involved with?
Well, it's... I'm happy to do anything, really. I'm sort of like that. And it's always a time thing. If I can do it, I'm happy to do it. And that's always been my attitude about the whole thing, really. Because, you know, I know a lot of people are very specific about various charities or one thing that they're going to be involved in, which is great. But I think, again, as I said before, I just try and do what I can. If a little bit of if I do something and it helps, then that's... You know, that means everything.
Well, you know how many million people are watching this. All the charities.
I've absolutely no time. But that's the key, really. I like to...
If you can,
as my granny used to say, I like to spread myself out.
Right, the grannies are getting a gold shout out today, aren't they? Why shouldn't they?
Wise.
Let's talk a little bit about partnerships, because you're a man who knows a lot about partnerships. You know, dance partnerships, why partnerships work, the chemistry. One of the things that we notice about the King and Queen is they do a lot of things together.
Yes.
The chemistry is interesting there.
Well, it's a lovely relationship to watch. They are King, Queen, they are husband, wife, they are best friends, and they are soulmates. And they're interested in each other and what each other are interested in. And it's just, I think they're a wonderful couple. I find them quite romantic, really, a little bit throwback, I know. Maybe that's just me, maybe that's the way I feel today. But I think it's a lovely couple. I think they're can you say that about the King and the Queen? They're a lovely couple.
I think you can.
I think they are. And if ever two people were made for each other, it's those two.
Well, Deborah Meaden and Anton de Burgh, thanks for telling us about the Big Help Out on Monday, and it's lovely for you both to give up some of your time on this wonderful Coronation Day. Real pleasure to see you.
Amazing thing to be here.
Thanks for asking.
We can take a little look at the crowds moving down the Mall. As we saw, there are certainly plenty of them, and there they come, coming from, well, we would imagine not just from the sides of the Mall, where they have been watching the parade, watching the royal carriages go by, but also from the big parks in London, in St James's Park, and also at Hyde Park, where there have been huge screens displaying all of the day's proceedings, from that extraordinary solemn service that we saw in the Abbey to Well, the unbridled joy, and you, sir, look very good in that suit. Wherever you got it from, it was money well spent. And there we are, King and Queen, not the only ones with crowns today, looking magnificent, enjoying his moment. That'll be posted within seconds, I would say, for his many thousands of followers. And there we see the huge police operation that has allowed all of these, probably tens of thousands, I expect, of people who have thronged into the Mall to happen safely without any incident. There she is filming it for years to come. And she'll show her children. She will say, I was there. The scenes are remarkable. I think the rain has truly stopped now, and maybe some of those soggy cagoules are starting to dry out. And we are hoping that in a matter of maybe 15 minutes or so, we shall have the royal family, the King and Queen, appearing on the balcony at Buckingham Palace, accompanied by other working members of the royal family, and that they will enjoy a fly past. Now, due to the weather, we had been planning, the long-term planning was for a 7-minute fly past, but we think due to the low cloud and the adverse conditions, it's more likely to be a fly past of around about 2 to 3 minutes. It's going to be helicopters and the Royal Air Force acrobatic team, so that is something to look forward to. There's certainly been plenty to look at today, not least the wonderfully smart outfits, the robes, the uniforms. And joining me now with their expert eye for such things is the English fashion accessories designer, I should say British fashion accessories designer, Anya Hindmarsh, and once again India Hicks is here. Thanks both for taking the time to join us. It has been, Anya, a feast for the senses. In terms of looking at what was worn today, what caught your eye?
It has to be the Queen Consort. I think she looked absolutely spectacular, and I think all the stories and the meaning behind her outfit was really, really moving, actually.
So this was a Bruce Oldfield design gown, and it was very much a gown. And would you say there are sort of rules to be followed when you are making a gown for something as significant as this?
Well, it is an historical gown. It's immediately going to, be a moment in history, and so absolutely needs to be safe. It needs to be sort of comfortable. It needs to be respectful. I think it needs to be a nod to all the traditions. It has the lovely embroidery on it, which represents the 4 nations. So it's a very special thing, and no one better really than Bruce, who is a trusted person to make the gown.
Explain that to me then. What does it take from somebody who is a couturier to make something that can work throughout the day, because you've got to be able to get up and down steps and in and out of carriages and sit comfortably and not look like you're trussed up like a Christmas turkey. What does it take in skill to make a gown like that?
Well, I think comfort matters, and not creasing, all those really obvious basic things that matter, especially in this sort of weather. But I think also someone you've worked with before, so that you feel yourself as well. I think that's very important on the day. He has an amazing history as well, actually, Bruce Oldfield. He's dressed many royals, and actually also is a real inspiration, actually, with having been brought up in a Barnardo's home and actually really having been an inspiration to people who've come from sort of humble beginnings. So it's a really lovely story as well.
Yes, because he has had a long and very storied career, but this surely must be the point at which he says, I've reached the top. Today is a day to breathe out for Bruce Oldfield.
I think he deserves it, actually. He's a thoroughly nice man.
India, what did you make of the beautiful stuff that we saw today, particularly in the Abbey?
I thought it was very reassuring, because I think there's been much discussion about we're going to lose some of our pomp and circumstance and pageantry, and the fact that the dukes and a number of the peers have been invited not to wear their ermine robes. But I don't think we missed that at all. I think we saw everything to perfection. Penny Mordaunt standing there, not only with that historic sword clutched to her chest, but also her headpiece, which was made by Jane Taylor Millinery, and I actually wore a hat by her for the Queen's funeral. So again, it's lovely to see these British brands coming out. I'm wearing something called Susanna of London, and the Duchess of Edinburgh also was wearing something made by this brand, To the Ground. I loved seeing the long again. At the Queen's coronation, everybody was in long. That was the trend, obviously. The King's coronation before that, everyone was in long. So it was lovely to see the Princess of Wales and the Duchess of Edinburgh in long.
The formality of these events, do you think, we had lockdown. Everybody was in elasticated waistbands and trainers. What we saw today is another way of being, is that formality. People, more generally, are not required to get this dressed up. But do you think events like today help to promote that idea that actually it's terribly nice sometimes to really make the effort?
Yes, I think it is. I think definitely. And I think
Jamie Oliver said to you earlier about minding your P's and Q's when you're around His Majesty. And I think that there needs to still be a sense of that, a few P's and Q's. I think our Princess of Wales gets it absolutely right, where she is so beautifully dressed in often a high street brand that we can all understand and feel inspired by. And it's attainable. It's a brilliant balance that we're seeing now. And yet, she looks absolute perfection every time.
Yes, let's talk for a moment, why don't we, Anya, about the Princess of Wales, because we saw her today wearing this Dame Grand Cross robes as the other immediate members of the royal, female members of the royal family, where underneath it she was wearing an Alexander McQueen gown. I'm wondering if on the balcony we might get a right good look at that, because I'd like a right good look at it. And very interestingly, quite a contemporary trend of her daughter Charlotte, aged 8, wearing precisely the same thing as Mum, but just a child's version of it.
Very much the mini-me, which is actually rather charming. And I think again, the beautiful workmanship, the craftsmanship, and actually craft is really important. I think that's at the heart of British fashion. We mustn't forget the craftsmen. They are the heroes, I think, of fashion in so many respects. And the embroiderers, the amazing gold bullion thread. I mean, it's really special work that just takes many hands and many, many days.
Hats, of course, are a complete nightmare for most of us. You know, if we have to go to something when we have to wear a hat, it's not often a great moment. And we saw today a different interpretation, not a tiara, not a hat, but the Princess of Wales was wearing, it did look elaborate, but in an entirely appropriate way. What did you make of it?
So it's a rather lovely headpiece by Jess Collett, actually, who in fact was actually, her business was funded initially by a fund from the Prince's Trust.
Oh, wonderful.
It's a very nice sort of full circle moment. And I think a nod to a fresh new start of the monarchy, and very much, I think, out of respect for our new king, who is, I think, requested no tiaras and loves, obviously, has a passion for nature and sustainability and environment. So I think it's very much out of respect to him.
Yes, India, just briefly, what did you make of those headpieces? I thought they were quite stunning on both the little princess.
I thought it was so appropriate, and Anya said it beautifully. There was that moment as the king and queen got into that incredible state carriage where you thought, are they going to lose the crown? Are we going to have a crown running off? But they did it brilliantly, and there must have been quite a lot of practice on that. Talking about creasing, you know, my own experience with coming down the Mall was Princess Diana's wedding train.
When you were a bridesmaid, of course, yeah.
And of course, you can practice so much, and they had practiced with the 25-foot, and we'd done that in the Abbey. But once she got into that coach, nobody anticipated how much material there was going to be. She had her quite large father, and so when she got out the other end, it was a nightmare. As Annie has pointed out, you've got to anticipate the creases.
You're both very strict, and I like it. So many rules, so many things to think about. Thank you so much for your expert analysis. That was really interesting. Let's find out how spirits are on the Mall. Anita Rani is still there. Anita.
I am still here, Kirsty. I think you said that the rain had stopped about 5 minutes ago. I can confirm that it's still very much raining here down on the Mall. The crowds are trickling down now. Can you imagine how packed it is at the front? I'm joined by Jan Hugo. Jan is a royal memorabilia collector and possibly one of the biggest royal fans on the planet, because Jan, you have travelled all the way from Australia.
We did.
To be here.
We did.
How's your day been? Has it been worth the travel?
It was a 30-hour trip, so I had to sort of weigh it up, but yeah, I think the King's won.
Yes. I mean, what was it like being here?
Oh, amazing. Like, the atmosphere is just out of this world. I don't even know how to describe it. It's the best thing I've ever done in my life.
And you will have it forever now.
I know. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Tell me about your memorabilia collection. How many pieces have you got?
Oh, more than 10,000 now. I gave up counting. I don't know.
Where do you keep it all?
All through the house. We live in a museum.
How do your kids feel about that?
Oh, they just think I should be locked up somewhere. It's not normal.
So tell me about some of your main pieces. What are your favourites that you've got?
Oh, there's some beautiful Queen Elizabeth pieces, things I'll treasure now that she's no longer here. Lots of music boxes from Diana, lovely pieces from her. Really old pieces, Queen Victoria, things way back to George III. So I can't pick a favourite, there's too many.
And how much shopping have you done since you got here?
Okay, I bought an empty suitcase with me.
Of course you did.
So that is full. I've sent 3 boxes home.
3 boxes?
3 boxes
shipped
home.
already?
Yeah, and the palace sent a big box as well.
How much money have you spent?
Too much. David's having kittens, but...
Your husband's off camera, so we're not mentioning it.
He's hiding in the corners, aren't
Well, look. Because you've travelled all this way, I've got something just for you that not many people will have. Nobody else can buy this in the shops. Jan, just for you. Another bit of memorabilia.
Oh, thank you so much. It'll go in the cupboard with all the rest.
It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you,
It's been a wonderful day. Thanks for having us.
Just for you.
Thank you.
My script.
Yes, I'm going to keep that. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alicia. Well, as we await the appearance of the newly crowned King and Queen on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, I'm joined now by Air Commodore John Lyle, and Robert Hardman is back with us. Now, this fly past, it's not an ideal day for it, John, is it? Tell us the complications of trying to stage something that is as important in terms of people's safety as it is for the spectacle on a day like today.
Well, as you mentioned, the original aspiration was to have 68 aircraft, for a mixture of World War II aircraft, rotary wing helicopters, fast jets, all flying in different formations. And that's incredibly complex. So it takes an awful lot of planning. And it also means you need to make sure that you get all those aircraft together in a safe place, which is over the North Sea. And therefore, the plan had been for all the aircraft to join up into a long train of the different formations as we flowed in from over the North Sea. And to do that, you need the weather. And unfortunately, today, that's what's conspired against us. So we've had to take a very difficult decision to remove some of the aircraft from the fly past. We're still pleased that we've got the helicopters and the Red Arrows, but unfortunately we haven't managed to deliver as much as we would like because of the need to stay safe.
Well, that's most important for everybody, of course, and I think everybody appreciates that. I think it is remarkable, given how unpredictable the weather is and how low the cloud is, that we are going to see a fly past at all. Robert Hardman, you looking forward to it? We do love a fly past.
We love a fly past. Yeah. I mean, these things happen. I mean, if you think back to the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, I mean, I think it had to cancel the fly past then over the river because of the weather, but I think,
Right, well, all I can hear right now is the most massive cheer behind me, so there is the reason. We have King Charles III and Queen Camilla in the imperial state crown and Queen Mary's crown, waving to the thousands of people who are thronging the Mall, who have braved the rain and are here to witness an historic moment. And we see there the pages, who, I have to say, did behave very well, getting a moment that will stay with them for the rest of their lives. And also, Queen Camilla is joined by the two ladies in attendance who helped her with her train and doubtless steadied the nerves too this morning as she was getting ready. A wave to the crowd, and the crowd waves back. Robert Hardman, I believe, as a very young prince, was it age just 2 that Charles made his first balcony appearance?
Yep, it was 1951. He was 2, and he came out. They normally wait till you're sort of 2 or 3. The Queen came out as a baby in arms, but there we are. This is the rest of the family joining, and now the working family. It's quite interesting that we're seeing there all those who still undertake engagements, regular engagements with their children. But I mean, this is such an important moment because this is the first time he has led the family out as king. He's been on that balcony, as you say, Kirsty, since he was tiny. He can just about remember the coronation balcony moment, and ever since then he's been seeing these scenes. But he's leading them today. He's the one they're here to see.
He does look relaxed. He's taking it all in, and it must be quite a scene to be on the receiving end of. And when you say working members, I mean, obviously we've got children there, we've got the pages. Today, some of them better known faces than others. Take people through the working members of the royal family.
The working members, they're the ones who appear each day in what we call the court circular. There we see the new Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh there, Prince and Princess of Wales there. Then the pages, the King's pages, the Queen and her pages there to her left. But this is sort of, in a way, recognising those whose day-to-day job is supporting the monarchy. They are, the King's eldest son, Prince and Princess of Wales, and Princess Anne, of course, the Princess Royal, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. And also, it's nice to see there the elder cousins, there's the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, Princess Alexandra, and the Duke of Kent. They still play a part in this sort of broader royal frontline unit, if you like. They may not make the headlines every day, but they're still there, they've got their patronages, and the king feels a great debt of gratitude to them. So on a day like today, he's saluting them. What we haven't got yet is all the extended cousins and cousins of cousins and that sort of thing that we used to see at perhaps a birthday parade. I think underlying the messaging here is, today's a day about the monarchy rather than about me myself.
Yes, very interesting point. And I suppose such a special day when those youngsters have been involved. You want to say a sort of thank you.
Oh yeah, they've been working
There's
today.
a deal of pressure on those youngsters to go out there and behave well. Also very interesting to see. Well, there we are, away from two very popular people. Not in a wheelbarrow around the garden today. Something altogether different. And here we see, John, the helicopters coming in.
Yes.
Through the clouds, through the rain, they've made it.
Exactly, they've battled through. So this is the first of 5 formations of helicopters we'll have ahead of the Red Arrows. And what you're seeing is a formation, the first ones were a formation of 3 Juno helicopters, so training helicopters from No. 1 Flying Training School. And interestingly, on the second of those helicopters is Squadron Leader Rich Allinson, who was actually one of Prince William's flying instructors when he was going through his helicopter training. So there's a nice royal connection there.
And also interesting that the helicopters can fly lower, so that's one of the reasons it's safe for them.
They can, and they have slightly different rules when it comes to cloud base and how close to the weather they can get because of their slower speed.
Right, and even though it's very rainy then, it's not too dangerous for them today?
It's within the safety limits. It's right on the edge, which is why unfortunately we couldn't get the other aircraft, but absolutely within limits for the helicopters and for the Red Arrows.
And so they're coming right overhead, right over the palace. Everybody looks up. And
so at the top
himself,
of the
sorry, go ahead.
No, so the top of the screen there was the army formation, so a Wildcat and 2 of the AH-64s, so they're coming over now. So we've got formations initially from the Navy, then the Army, then the Royal Marines, and then finally the Royal Air Force.
And the King and the Prince of Wales both looking up there and understanding both as helicopter pilots. That's interesting. They know what it takes.
Well, we've got the first monarch who could fly a helicopter. He was, in his naval days, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was actually a very good Wessex helicopter pilot. He was top of his class, so he knows what's going through their minds. And of course, the Prince of Wales has flown many helicopters, so there's a lot of expertise up there. If they're flying the wrong way, I'm sure they won't just hear about it from their immediate bosses.
Now you see, everybody else is tilting their heads up apart from the King and Queen, but of course they've got something to be mindful of, so it's just eyes up for them.
Well, an occupational hazard of the head that wears the crown is you can't look down, as the Queen used to say. You've got to read your speech looking straight ahead.
So they're making a fair sound. We can see the windows of the palace there, even having a little shudder as those helicopters went past. And one of the things that I certainly wondered today is, how would the crowds be? Would it be a huge crowd? And we have a very definite answer, Robert Hardman, in that.
Yeah, we do. I mean, the crowds aren't as big as they possibly could be because of the new sort of the system they have for sealing off the processional area. You haven't got as many people in the immediate area, but here's the big
yes, here's the big moment, here's the main event.
Absolutely. So the Red Arrows, because they are a professional display team, they can work to greater weather limits than the other aircraft who have unfortunately been unable to join us. So we do get a chance to see the iconic Red Arrows in their red, white and blue as they come down the mount, which just looks fantastic.
What a scene.
They're currently in their 59th season. They've got another 60 displays to do this year.
And where are those displays? Are they all over the world, or do they tend to be in the British Isles?
So the majority of the British Isles, but they do go all over the world.
And this is the moment. a wonderful moment, an iconic moment, and it would have been a great shame if the weather had put stop. Sort of seal on the day, I think, John, don't you? That sort of visual spectacle is something that we come to know and be in awe of, and also be very fond of, that spectacle of the Red Arrows. Absolutely. The armed forces giving a round of applause. And in we go. A day that really Robert Hartman couldn't have gone more to plan, apart from the weather, but it is Britain. It is the spring.
It is a coronation.
It is the coronation.
And as the King said yesterday, when asked about the weather, he said it's a blessing. And look at him, he's absolutely delighted by that. That, as I said, this is his first time. It's so important. These firsts as a monarch, your first Christmas broadcast, your first cenotaph, and now this is his first appearance on the balcony. He'll never come back on the balcony wearing all that again. The next time we see him will be probably next month at the birthday parade. The more traditional balcony moment. But I think he can look back on today as the day that this is very much the punctuation marks of our national life is set by these moments.
And King Charles, and standing with him, Queen Camilla, a day that many people believed we would never see.
Yes, absolutely. I think a great moment for her. Now absolutely the Queen. I mean, that's as she's going to be known from now on. And I think, at the start of the reign, there were one or two people who thought perhaps, maybe this is going to be a bit of a sort of caretaker reign, because he is, as been said earlier today, he's the oldest monarch to be crowned that we've ever had. He'll be 75 later this year. But I think what he's done today, he's stamped his mark on this. It won't be one of the longest reigns, it just can't be, but it's going to definitely have a personality. And we've seen that already with a number of the sort of small things he's done. I mean, things are changing inside that palace. It's very nice to see the balcony back in action, because actually that's been a building site, the other side of those windows for the last year. They've had to put floorboards down today just to get everybody out there. But things are changing. They're changing, incrementally. It's not a sort of big overnight thing, but he definitely has his own ideas for this institution that we celebrate today.
And Air Commodore Lyle, as you watched the military earlier do the royal salute in Buckingham, did you get a chance to see that?
I did, yes.
I thought that was maybe one of the absolute highlights of the day, to hear that 3 cheers.
Absolutely, and it absolutely fills you up as someone who's serving in the military, the opportunity to see your monarch, to be involved in something of such national importance. And it's the sort of day that people will never forget.
We're getting an encore. It must be Coronation Day. And I would say, Robert Hartman, the King looks, I suppose entirely understandably, very relaxed. That is a huge responsibility, to have a successful coronation, not only that people come out onto the streets for, but actually that just simply goes well in terms of the logistics, because the amount of input, the amount of planning, and the amount of pressure is enormous.
It is enormous. I likened it earlier to a wedding day. It's the day the monarch, if you like, is sort of married to the people. There's all that stress. Now it's sort of downtime. One of the most charming scenes from the Queen's coronation are those pictures afterwards of what goes on in the palace. And now they're going to get back inside for photographs. I'd love to see those photographs. It was actually back in 1953, one of the maids of honour had to stop the King there, age 4, grabbing that crown off a table and running off with it. So I wonder if Prince Louis is going to reprise that role now.
He's got that look about him, hasn't he? Let's be honest.
He's definitely up to something. But that's nice. So there's the Queen just patting him, saying, well done. And as you said, watch those robes there. They were about to walk through a building site.
And that sight in those ermine robes with the crown on, we're not going to see that again.
That's Coronation Day. That's the only day that happens, and it's why this is so unique. I mean, as David was saying earlier, you really have to be in your 80s or 90s to have seen this sort of thing with your own eyes before.
And let's talk a little bit then about continuity, because surely that might be one of the reasons that people have trudged out on not the best day to stand in the rain and to be part of it all and to put on their Union Jack bowler hats and have a few beers. It is about tradition, a lot of it.
It's about tradition, it's continuity. I thought one of the most striking things was a new addition to this very, very ancient service. Right at the start, it began not with prelate, not with the Archbishop of Canterbury. It began with a 14-year-old boy effectively saying to the king, that chorister, Andrew Strachan, effectively saying, "Why are you here? What are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm here to serve." I think that was such an important preface, if you like, to the whole thing. Throughout this immense grandeur and tradition, we've just seen this sort of motive of kind of humility all day, just remind constitutionally, religiously, just sort of explaining where this king belongs in the sort of national landscape, if you like. Yes, he's the head of state. Yes, he's the king, but he's there to serve us too.
Anita Rani is on the Mall. She's having a chat. Let's go back and find out who she's talking to. Anita.
Yes, Kirsty, I am on the Mall. I think I have had the best seat in the house all day on the iconic Red Road that has seen numerous processions, ceremonies, weddings, funerals, and now, after 70 years, a coronation. And it's been about the people down here, and, well, we could just ask the people, have you had a good time? So many Union Jacks, we've seen all the hats, we've seen all the outfits, and people have travelled from all over the world to be here. And it's not just been about the crowds down here, some of them have camped overnight, it's about all the volunteers as well, the armed forces, St John's Ambulance, the stewards that have made this whole day run like clockwork. And the biggest privilege that everyone here, including myself, have is that we can all say, we were here to witness the coronation. Not forever. So it's been a great day from the Mall.
Thanks very much, Anita. Well, there we see the brollies are up. We can't dampen the spirits, but it is dampening the hair. So the brollies are up, and people have had their moment, the moment of seeing the crowned king and queen on the balcony in their ermine robes at Buckingham Palace. It's not a day we will see again because it's unique to Coronation Day. And for all of those people that chose to be part of it, quite a scene indeed. Well, Robert Hardman and David Olusoga are here just to chat through. I mean, in a way, David, it's unfair of me to ask you to analyse, because I suppose the thing about history is that we have to see it in a greater context, but that's what you're here for, so that's what I'm going to ask you to do. When you were looking at those scenes there, when you saw the King and Queen come out, what were your thoughts?
In the 20th century, there were 5 coronations, an average of every 20 years. If you were to stretch it over the century, we haven't seen one since 1953. That reanimation of a tradition lain dormant, but being there, we all knew it was inevitable, we knew it was coming. To actually see it is historic. Today we've been reminded of the deep religious history of the country, where there's been echoes of the 17th century in the oaths, echoes of the medieval age in the other sacraments of the coronation. That sense of continuity, that sense of tradition, as an historian, is absolutely fascinating. So, in that level, I think it is a remarkable thing to witness. Now it's done. Now a new reign formally begins. Lots of questions about the monarchy in Israel now. They're up for discussion, as they always are and always have been.
Yes, well, let's have a little bit of a discussion about it, because most of the people who in the census, answer the question of whether or not you're religious, we see at the heart of today this religious ceremony. Most people in Britain say no, they're not churchgoers anymore. They're not Christian. We have lots of different faiths as well. We saw them represented in the ritual of today. Do you think when you look at a day like today, it is really about being, above all else, nostalgic? Is that what you think it's about?
I'm not sure, and I think nostalgia is loaded with pejoratives. It's negative.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I think tradition is a more useful word. I think what you saw today was a strong representation and a huge effort to show the diversity of faith within Britain. One of the things that's very different between the Britain of today and the Britain of 1953. I think it's more difficult with a 1,000-year-old ceremony to reflect the other thing you mentioned, which is the fact that we are one of the most secular nations in the world. So you can have diversity of faith, but the lack of faith, which is a big factor in modern Britain, that's much harder to build into the ceremony. You can't, there's only so far you can modernise a 1,000-year-old ceremony without it stopping being that ceremony.
I mean, it's interesting, Robert Hardman, that we heard today, and we knew we were going to hear it, of course, defender of the faith. There was a time, I mean, was it in the early 90s when the then Prince Charles put forward the idea that at his coronation he would be defender of faiths. Well, that's very clearly been rolled back, and it was made clear, and I think, over time he maybe realised that as somebody who was head of the Church of England, that was not necessarily the most appropriate approach.
No, but I think it was an aspiration when he said it. Was back in 1994. Golly, I mean, how long ago was that? 30 years. But it was how he viewed the role. And actually, the late Queen articulated that herself in 2012 at her Diamond Jubilee. She made a speech to faith leaders at Lambeth Palace, and she talked about how she felt that the monarch had a duty to protect. And the same applies now. It's I think that oath, that sort of extra pre-oath oath, if you like, that we heard at the Abbey today, where the Archbishop says, your role is to help people to worship freely, and the King said, I will. So it was sort of there. It wasn't explicit, but it's very much understood that that's part of the role of a 21st century monarch. We may live in a more secular society, but he is there to protect the rights of everybody of any faith and none to think as they wish, and worship as they wish.
And David, do you think, in terms of a modern monarchy, and of course the House of Windsor has managed to survive because it's very good at changing incrementally, slowly, taking the mood, seeing what's acceptable, seeing what's not. Our king, our new king, do you think he gets it? Do you think he has a sense of how to propel the monarchy forward and change things?
Well, I think when we analyse things he said when he was the Prince of Wales, we have to remember he knew he was the Prince of Wales, and things he felt able to say then he couldn't say now. As king, and he's quite been clear about the fact that he understands the limits of the role and that he was in a different role previously. To an extent, you can't modernise this as a monarchy, and that hereditary principle is one that many people will never be comfortable with. But the majority of our fellow citizens in 2023 are comfortable with this being the way that we choose a head of state. They revel in the ceremonies and the tradition. The people here, this is a huge event in their lives, something that they care deeply about. The challenge, I think, is to reach out to the people who aren't just obsessed with history and tradition like myself, who aren't here because they love the monarchy. A lot of people just feel sort of neutral about the monarchy. Not that they're opposed to it or they're desperate for it to become a republic. They just don't feel very much. And that's potentially an opportunity for the new king to find a way of being a monarch and being a monarchy that reaches out to them.
Robert, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think David's absolutely right. I mean, I think the greatest threat to a modern monarchy, it's not going to be the mob storming the palace. It's relevance, or rather irrelevance.
Yes, indifference.
Indifference and then irrelevance. It's that moment people wake up one morning and say, well, why are you still here? You've got to keep, not exactly reinventing, you've just got to keep at it. And it's not a brand of toothpaste. You can't just relaunch it with a new slogan. When you have a new reign, you have to keep doing what you've always done. But what the monarchy does do is it's out there every day. We don't always read about it, but they're on their away days. They're going around the world. I was in Germany with the king the other day. You saw how he went down there. I mean, it wasn't huge news here, but it was when he addressed the German Parliament in German. That made an impact. It goes back to this point that I think it does help us punch slightly above its weight. It's what we are, as David says. Most people are entirely happy with this constitutional arrangement. It may not make sense, but it's the one that we have, and we're very proud of it. But it's got to earn its keep, and I'm quite sure that he knows that. The complacency is something we're not going to see. It was so interesting, just the day after his mother died, day after the Queen's death, when everyone was slightly sort of lost, he was right on it, addressing the nation. We didn't hear from Elizabeth II. She didn't address the people for 10 months after she became Queen, until the Christmas broadcast. He was doing it right away. He was immediately off round, touring the country, going to the home nations. He is, I've said it before, but he's a king in a hurry. But he's definitely, this is not a caretaker reign. This is a man on a mission.
Well, his wife has said of him, the thing about him is he wants to save the world. He is somebody who is propelled by that need to make change. I mean, on the one hand, you could say, well, that's admirable. On the other hand, you could say he's given himself quite a job there.
Well, the world certainly needs saving. There's no question about that. I'd like to think that he'll find ways of modernising the role. I'd like to think he'd find ways of reaching out to people who have that indifference. As Robert said, indifference is the ultimate kryptonite for a monarchy. But I do think it's a challenge, and I think we need to recognise that one of the great strengths that they have is that many people look at politics and they think, well, maybe this is a more balanced way of representing a wider cross-section of the population. We've had a year with 3 prime ministers. We've not made the best case for an alternative over the past few months. So I think we have to wish him well and hope that there are ways of modernising and that he's capable of finding them.
And let's talk, sorry, you want to say something?
Well, I just thought that reminded me of it's a very good point, David. There was a rather good tweet in that extraordinary week. Someone said, there's a pint of milk in my fridge. It's seen 2 prime ministers and 2 monarchs, and it's still going strong. And you just saw, actually, there is something to be said. You know, a country that can change its head of state and its head of government in 3 days, it happened in 3 days, without an angry word, without a shop being fired, without any sort of unrest or disorder, let alone riots. You know, there is something to be said for that stability, that continuity. And you do, I've sort of noticed it over the years, you're travelling around the world with the royal family, they do represent a sort of continuity, particularly in countries that have had a lot of turmoil, and they look at what that over there represents, and they're rather, you know, they're quite envious, actually.
But the case that is put also is that, yes, and you know, one might decry the current state of politics either here or anywhere else in the world, given the state that many places are in, is that in having a monarchy, it is something that floats above it, and therefore people can automatically not necessarily respect one monarch or another, but respect the fact that we have it there, that it feels solid and it doesn't feel that it's grubbing around in the gutter for our vote.
When the politicians are having a punch-up, or there's great turmoil over the road, or there's an interregnum electorally, you know, we're in a hung parliament situation, whatever it might be, at least the people know that, you know, things, all those arms of the state, they don't owe their allegiance to whoever's in number 10. They owe their allegiance to a different entity that's not going anywhere. And that is, it's not something we think about every day. But it's there, and I think it's part of that sense of continuity and stability that we may take for granted. We may only register it subconsciously, but at least we feel that, you know, everything's going to work okay.
David Olusoga, one of the most interesting legacies of the King's time as Prince of Wales is the Prince's Trust. Of course, it's still ongoing. And I touched on this a little bit with David Lammy earlier today, which is 1 million people so far it's helped, and it was set up, I believe I'm right in saying this, Robert, when the Prince was in his late 20s, mid to late 20s.
Yeah, he used the contents of his Royal Navy pension to get it going in the mid-70s.
And it is set up to help not just people who want to help start their own businesses, who might not be thought of as a good bet for a loan, people who want to get back into education, who want to re-engage with their skills. It's very interesting that he chose something, as somebody who you would consider to be the very sort of epitome, personification of the establishment, to reach out to people who are disenfranchised, to those who feel on the outside. What do you make of that?
I think it shows an astuteness that hopefully we're going to see a lot more of. But I think it's also not historically aberrant. Monarchs have often realised that one of their ways of legitimising their role of centering themselves in that conversation is to be aware of inequality. In a hereditary system, being aware of the disadvantage that many people are born into, I think is a natural response. Queen Victoria raised a huge amount of money for charity during the Irish famine. Other monarchs have been aware of the cost of coronations and have wanted them to be toned down. This idea that being aware of these social issues, it's not a new phenomenon. It's not something new to our current king.
Interesting. And yes, a coronation in the middle of a cost of living crisis, which day to day for a lot of British people is a very, very real thing. Do you think the coronation that we saw today managed the balancing act of giving something splendid but at the same time being scaled down and not gratuitous?
It's a very fine line they have to tread, because you know, as David says, there are some people who will be looking at this today and saying, what a complete waste of money. But you stand back from it and think, well, this goes to the heart of what we are as a country. We have huge events, whether it's, you know, FA Cup finals or parades, or we host many big things. So I think something that goes to the heart of what we're about. We've got to do it properly. In 1953, the country was in a far worse state. We were on rations. People couldn't afford to couldn't buy meat because it was being rationed. And at the time, there was a debate, you know, should we really be having this big event at a time of post-war austerity? And actually, most people said, yeah, we should, because, you know, this matters. We need to do it properly. There's nothing worse than a pared down, scaled down sort of coronation on the cheap. As Churchill said, you can't have a coronation with bailiffs in the house. He wanted to do it properly, and I feel today we have struck the right balance. It could have been much bigger. We could have filled the Abbey with 8,000 seats instead of the 2,000 we had. We could have had all sorts of bells and whistles, but I think they've called it right.
Thanks to you both for all your insight, for your knowledge, for your historical references. I've learned a lot, and it's been wonderful to share the day with you, such an important day. Thank you to you both.
Thank you.
Well, there we are. I've never seen anything quite like it, and I imagine neither of you. What a day. History unfolding in front of our very eyes. The man born in that palace just behind me more than 7 decades ago, today finally meeting his destiny and stepping out onto its balcony, a crowned king. He greeted the crowds we saw there with a warm smile, cementing his relationship as their sovereign, and by his side to support him, his queen and heirs. And that roar of approval from the crowd on the Mall seemed to tell us something about the joy that this coronation day has brought to so many. It will doubtless tell their families in decades to come, I was there. The arcane ceremony in the Abbey, that exquisite music, the priceless jewels and magnificent carriages were dazzling. A reminder, maybe, that however much the world changes, tradition and ritual and ceremony still play an essential part in bringing us together in a spirit of celebration and community. The king pledged his sacred oath and wore an ancient crown, but all in the presence of a very modern congregation, environmental campaigners, charity volunteers, war veterans, and even a few spangly superstars in its midst. All witness to the beginning of a new era for Britain and the Commonwealth. And as that sea of happy faces and fluttering Union flags took over the centre of London, many millions around the country and the world will have doubtless tuned in to see the spectacle, including that remarkable parade, where our military did what it does so well, gilding the occasion with unrivaled pomp and pageantry. Today, so much of the United Kingdom in all its splendid variety has seemed unified in celebration on a day that's been fit for a king. Thank you so much for joining us, and for now, bye-bye.
Your Majesty, as children of the Kingdom of God, we welcome you in the name of the King of Kings.
This is the royal law. These are the lively oracles of God. Will you, to your power, cause law and justice in mercy to be executed in all your judgment?
I will.
God save the King!
Prince of Wales, pledge my loyalty to you.